Hey everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, experts from Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journey in this growing industry, giving you some insights on the ecosystem to hopefully help you to take part in the climate change fight and benefit from the opportunities that it can also represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. During the first part, you will get to know our speaker, their perspective on the climate crisis, and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the talk will be for our members of the community who will learn from the speakers their secret sauce on how to, sharing with you their unique expertise on various topics as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on to help you to become a better leader in your field. Let's go for the show. Hi everyone, in today's episode we will speak with Sylvain Carle, Senior Director at SecondMuse, which is running a global program called Venture for Climate Tech, supporting early-stage climate tech founders around the world. Sylvain will share with you his journey as a top Canadian tech investor and the drivers that pushed him to jump into the climate tech ecosystem. You will learn also that Sylvain is a strong believer that money is an incredible lever to change the world, and he hopes to catalyze capital for the challenges of today and for the next decades. Sylvain will also share how they evaluate impact in companies they support and sharing with you the state of impact evaluation in the climate tech industry today. In the second part of the show, Sylvain will share his secret sauce to founders seeking to build venture-backed companies, covering the investment decision framework used during his investor career. Sylvain, welcome to the show. Hi, Sylvain. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. We're super excited and happy to have you here with us. So before we start, could you please give us a 30-second introduction about SecondMuse and the For Climate Tech program that you're part of?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Sylvain Carle. I'm based in Montreal, but SecondMuse is across the world in more than 10 cities now. And we have our For Climate Tech program that runs out of New York. But with the year that we've had last year, it's a pretty global program as most activities are online. So this program was launched in partnership with NYSERDA, the New York State Energy R&D Agency. So it's funded by the New York State. And the goal is really to support and invest in entrepreneurs at the earliest stage, right? So it's an idea stage program, so even pre-accelerator, we could say. And so there's not a lot of programs and funding at this stage. So pretty happy about the fact that we're able to support entrepreneurs so early in their journey.
So let's start by the top. Can you tell us a little bit more about who is Sylvain Carle? I mean, what's your story, your background, and maybe anything specific about you that is not public yet? Something that you like, you don't like. Tell us a bit more.
Yes, to make a long story short, last year, pre-COVID, I made a transition, really a switch to focus more on environmental impact. So I've been an investor now for 6 years as a partner at Real Ventures, a seed fund in Canada, a tech seed fund. And also a big part of what I love doing is developing ecosystems, right? So, and people talk a lot about ecosystems. And one entrepreneur once told me, I didn't understand what an ecosystem was until I spoke to this vice president at this large company. And he summed it up, it's an ecosystem that works well gives you more trust than you should be given or accelerates things for you. And he said, it should have taken me like months and months to get to a level to talk to that person in that company, but the right intro from the right person made it happen in a week. And so really, I like to say we work in tech, but it's a people business, right? It's all about this relational capital or this social trust that you can put in place. So that's been what I've been doing for a long time in my life. Before being an investor and general manager at an accelerator in 2014 when I joined Real, I worked for a few years at Twitter as a senior developer advocate. And the untold story there is that my previous startup was one of the first companies to use the Twitter APIs. So we were partners with Twitter. And I tried to sell my company to Twitter, but they didn't buy it for several reasons. And one of the main reasons was that not specifically for Twitter, but I realized that as an entrepreneur, co-founder and CTO of a company that was called Medium, we had made a lot of errors in the way we structured our company financially. So we had convertible debts, we had a VC with not a lot of expertise in tech, more finance people. So in a way, I learned by mistake in that the mistakes we made in this company were a great foundation to become a better investor in the future. I didn't know at the time, but I still ended up going to work at Twitter. When I started interviewing, there were 300 people at Twitter. It took about 6 months to go through all the interviews. It was pretty standard at the time. You would meet a lot of people from a lot of departments. Mm-hmm. And when I started to work there 6 months later, there were 800 people, summer of 2012. Twitter IPO'd in 2013. So I was able to see what happens. What's that tail end of that startup story when you get to the IPO, which was super amazing. And then a year after I left, after 2 years in San Francisco, my daughter was born in San Francisco, but I wanted to get back closer to home. So I got back to Montreal in 2014, and there were 3,500 people at Twitter at the time. Okay. So crazy growth, but I loved it. It was a fantastic experience. It was a great company. Dick Costello was the CEO at the time. Amazing manager. His ability to communicate to that company that was growing like crazy and fighting fires left and right. This is what happens, like everything you don't read on TechCrunch. Yeah. By the way, most of what you read on TechCrunch, some is true, some is not true, but that's for another time. But Twitter was a company in the public eye even before being a public company. So there was a lot of pressure around the company. And I joined at a time where Twitter had made, I'd say, some mistakes but there were some business reasons why they restrained the access to the APIs to developers, which I had benefited as a startup before. And I was joining at the time where it was starting to reopen and re-engage with developers. And so in a way, I was the startup guy that was working with Twitter, and then I become the Twitter guy working with startups. And that was a pretty amazing time. I must say, the people, the developers I got to work with in the open source community also, because there was a lot of them. It was a great time, but it was becoming a large company, right? And I'm an entrepreneur by heart. There were many entrepreneurs inside Twitter, but the itch to start new projects and to grow from nothing, from 0 to 1, as some say, was too strong. So, and I thought about, like, what's my next startup? What's going to be my next company? And then I realized that the same way that Twitter was a platform that could empower and enable many people to develop on top of it, finance, I never thought of myself as a finance person, but finance and capital was a way to empower and to get more people to start more companies and to build great things. So that led me to working for a fund and for an accelerator. And instead of doing my own stuff, move into a position of supporting others and helping them grow, develop, and scale, or pivot, or reinvent themselves if it doesn't work, because that's part of the job too, right?
Exactly, and I heard recently that one of your little, or at least all the energy that you put to support one of your early stage founders at that time was Saunders, who went through SPAC to the public market. So congratulations, that has been also
Thank
a big
you. Thank you.
achievement.
That's a pretty amazing ride, right? They were in my first cohort of the accelerator in 2014 in Founder Fuel in Montreal. And Francis Davidson at the time he came to us with this crazy idea, but it was, sometimes it's too good to be true, and we're like, let's try it. Let's see where he can take this. And he's taking it public now, so that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But what was your, driver to jump into the impact and climate tech industry after all of those years as, I would say, like a regular tech investors in the Canadian ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that there was two things. First, I must give credit to my wife, Yannick. She's been an activist, filmmaker, and has had nature and the environment at heart, but both in her personal life and professional life, right? She took me in the streets to les manifestations, as we say in French.
Yeah.
I was not that type of guy, but I realized that there's power in that. But I always love nature, right? I love camping, canoeing, kayaking, hiking, biking, snowboarding. So I love to play outside. I love the nature, and I realized that this power, this leverage that we have with finance could be applied to social issues and to the environmental crisis. And so I decided to sort of like pivot a little bit, and I tried to find like what's the best way to explore. And it just happened that one of my side projects at the time was with the McConnell Foundation, which is a pretty large Canadian foundation, with the help of La Maison d'Innovation Sociale, a social innovation hub in Montreal, SecondMuse, and at the time Real Venture, where I was, were collaborating on this idea of a future economy lab. So what is one sector of the economy that is emerging that could benefit from more support? And so we ran a series of workshops. We interviewed the founders, we interviewed fund managers, and really to discover that there was a challenge in the earliest stage, like the first few $100,000 are the hardest to get. There weren't at the time that many angels that were looking at green tech or climate tech. That's 2 years ago. And the more I worked on this, the more I talked to founders, I realized that there was a real need, and that it wouldn't happen within the context of Real Ventures. I still love my partners there. I'm still part-time as a venture partner at Real. I think they're doing a great job, but they're broad, right? They're sector agnostic, so technology transforming all the sectors, all the industries. And I really wanted to focus more on environmental impact as part of the investment thesis, right? Not just as a possible side benefit or added bonus, but as the core. And so discussing with the team at SecondMuse Capital, that's a new division of SecondMuse from a few years ago, they've been helping other funds develop their ecosystem strategy. So we're partner, the program that we have in New York is one, but we also have one in Singapore and in Southeast Asia where Circulate Partners operate a $100 million plus fund for plastic in the oceans. And SecondMuse is working alongside them to build the incubation network to support entrepreneurs, to develop entrepreneurship in 7 countries in Southeast Asia. So the SecondMuse operates the whole ecosystem building activities. So that was really, I really love the fact that SecondMuse understood innovation, impact, ecosystem development. And as anyone who's been supporting entrepreneurs, you get to a point where you realize, well, we need to fund these projects. There needs to be money that is leveraged, that is invested for these projects to really grow and deliver the full impact that they could deliver. So the more I was talking with the team at SecondMuse, we just said, let's try it. Let's fundraise. Let's go in the market, and that's what we're doing now. we're in the process of raising a new seed fund called Clio for, and we call it climate innovation. So it's climate tech, a bit more broad, a bit more approaching it more broadly. It could be process innovation. It doesn't have to be specifically tech, but with my background in AI and big data, of course, it's going to be, let's call it digital intelligence in the sectors that benefit the climate, with the ultimate goal of decarbonizing the economy. Like that's the core investment thesis, is we need to deliver decarbonization results. And the strategy is to say, like, there's a lot of public commitments for being carbon neutral or even carbon negative from public organizations, from company, from countries. We keep hearing them. There's even a carbon tracker. Carbon 180 is running one of those carbon tracker. Like, what are the commitments? And my belief is that there's, after you commit to something, the means to get to your objectives are not all there yet. So there's more commitment than capacity to deliver the commitments. And for me, that's the investment zone. That's the innovation opportunity. How do we get thousands of companies started to deliver on these goals in the coming decades?
And I think that would be a good segue to move to my next question. I'd like to understand a little bit, and you can maybe give us a little bit your overview of the climate tech ecosystem today. Where are we at, and what needs to happen to have the climate tech ecosystem being able to fully support the 2050 net zero goal? And I think you already started to answer to the question.
Yeah, I can just carry on. I'm of two minds on this. First, one thing I did last year was that I joined a boot camp called Terra Do for people who are entering the climate space, right? So it's for anyone who wants to be looking at climate. And what I really liked about that program is that we talk with scientists. We understood. It was several months, but it was taking a step back and really understanding that there's complex issues at play. There's policy, there's the way nature works, there's the physics, there's communication, there's so it's not something simple to solve. So there's a reason why we haven't progressed as much as we should have, and that if technology and innovation can help, but it won't solve everything, right? So I'm not a techno solutionist in that sense. I don't believe in the techno utopia. I think we can do more, and that we can progress, and that we can invent amazing things, that we can decrease the cost, we can go faster, but it won't solve everything. So on one side, we should be doing it, and we need to be doing it, and I'm really happy to see more and more people getting into climate to work on this. But it can't only be on the mitigation side. We also have to work on the adaptation of society, because we will, like, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Like, I don't believe we'll completely go back. I think we'll suffer negative consequences in the coming decades. We're already starting to see some. So we need to take a broad perspective and take care both of the planet, but of the people too, right? It's Patrick at la Maison de l'Innovation Sociale made me realize that social impact and environmental impact are really two sides of the same medal, right? Yeah. If you don't take care of the planet, you'll have huge people issues and people problem, right? It's a society needs a stable environment. And I mean, in 2021, we're generally relatively stable. There's pockets in the world where there's still wars, and I don't want to get into that, but like I don't believe there's still a lot more progress for humanity to do. Let's just say it like that. But that being said, there's less poverty, there's less disease. And so we should be, like, we have the intellectual capital in the world to solve the climate issues. We're starting to see some political will being applied, especially in the US, refreshingly recently. But we need much more. And coordinating, since we have one planet and many nations, many countries, that's not an easy setup. That's generally, people don't always agree on the way to move forward. And there's inequality in the world, right? And so all of these are complex issues. This is a long-winded answer, but to say that there's a lot to do. I believe that we can do a lot of good in the world, and that tech is a power for good. Tech is neutral. It depends what you do with it, and if you have to be aware of your biases. But it won't be enough, right? So on one side, I'm super optimistic about how innovation will help us. On the other side, I'm also pragmatic and realist, and I think that it's not only about hard science and hard tech. It's also about education. It's about, immigration is going to be more and more a question we need to ask ourselves when the world becomes a place where some pockets of the world becomes harder to live in. This is in front of us. Like, honestly, most scientists are pretty pessimist. So what do we do with that if we're realist and pragmatic? Big questions. So this is why I'm in this for like the rest of my life. Like there's decades of work to do. There's decades of work that has been done, but there's decades of work to do.
So thank you so much for sharing this your opinion on that. I think it's very valuable, and I join you as well. I mean, also we jump into that I would say industry, but it's more than an industry. It's a mission, and if everyone can bring a little bit of what they can do into it, it would be probably like more positive than negative, that's for sure. So let's go a little bit into the specific of Venture for Climate Tech initiative that you're part. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the program works, what's the thesis behind it, and what do you offer to founders during the program?
Yes, let me just pull up the website. So at the same time, so it's forclimatetech.org. So first thing, it's a nonprofit. For Climate Tech is a nonprofit. It's not a venture fund. It works in partnership with funds that will invest in those companies one day. We're currently in our first session. So 2021 is the initial cohort, initial session. And this will conclude from September to November with an investor boot camp, and somewhere in November, a demo day, an event, a summit, a festival. We don't know yet the shape and form, but what's really cool is that as investors, really often we meet with founders and entrepreneurs, and they're not ready yet for investment. And there's not so many resources for founders at this stage. So I'm really happy in this context. I was on the selection committee, and it was the case of, great, you're not ready, we're here for you. You're at the right place at the right time. Actually, if you were too ready, you passed the program. And so the program is administered by NextCorps and SecondMuse in New York State. And there's two parts to it. There's Venture for Climate Tech, which is idea stage startups. And then there's Scale for Climate Tech, which is for later stage, more post-seed or around Series A, to help you specifically with manufacturing, as hardware is often an important part of the mix for climate. So the program has launched. We have an initial cohort. It was pretty amazing to see. I think we got over 700 applications from all over the world. And it's convenient to talk about climate as a sector, but as you were saying, really we're talking about 7, 8, 9, and 12 different industries that we can put under that umbrella. So we got companies from the full range of potential, and a lot of them with their main challenge a little bit scientific and technology, but mostly that's not the biggest issue. Like if they're at this point, a lot of them are researchers or working with research centers, and the science is advanced enough that we can believe that it could become a commercial product within a few years. And I think the whole question is in this expression, within a few years. What's a few? Is it 1 or 15? And so that's one thing that we're trying to do with these founders is to really understand where they're at, what's the technology or science risk or de-risking that needs to happen. But then what's the market discovery process? What's the market validation process for a company like this one? And oftentimes, one of the additional challenge I would say in this sector, other sectors have it, but a lot of your customers are either public organizations, so city administration or state or country. They're hard customers to get. Long sales cycles, not always clear the process to get there, or large companies. And if you're a small startup, your ability to approach a large company is not always, it's not always that easy. So really helping them in this phase to bring in partners, large companies, governments, organizations that can come and see what's up and coming in terms of innovation, and then make these connections. And as I was saying earlier, it's really, it's a people ecosystem. It's putting people in touch. And sometimes we've seen some companies in the selection process where some of the judges were like, no, this is scientifically impossible. Like, it looks like a great idea, but if you know chemistry, this is impossible. And I was like, this is not my background. I'm a tech person. I was like, you're sure? Could we try it? Like, and they're like, no way, impossible. Okay, let's the laws of nature can't be broken here. But what was interesting is that the approach then from these founders, I think. No, let me restate that. I'll restart that sentence.
So I have a question. Like, when you select all of those companies, what is how do you measure the impact? Do you guys have any like specific process or framework, or do you rely? I mean, you mentioned in your team that you have some scientists as well that can give this scientific validation regarding a process that we might not know all understand, but do you guys have any criteria in terms of CO2 removed or avoided? How does it work? Or maybe social impact?
Yes, the challenge with startups at the earlier stage is that it's a promise of impact, right? So if you look at the public company and you look at their ESG report from last year, you could actually, if you wanted to go audit the data and crunch the number and look at what methodology was used and come to similar independent results that would say, okay, this is a good report. Actually, that this is a booming part of the industry, because not all of these results are that credible. So greenwashing is a real thing. But for startups, it's a future impact that they're promising. So you have to combine, if this product works and if they find their market, and if they grow at the rate they want to grow, and if the customers buy it, what's the impact? So you have, it's essentially with startups, what you're doing is that you're building a model with key assumptions, and then we're starting to see different methodologies out there. There's a few the impact management project is a pretty common one now. It's open source too, so it's a good reference. So you have these methodologies out there, and there's also software. So for example, Crane Tools is a software that you can use to calculate the environmental impact of your tech. So there's this model, and then you have to plug in the underlying data. Because if you're building a bolt or a car in a specific part of the world, you also have to account for the full life cycle of what you're building. So it's a bit complex, but once you have the framework, the methodologies, and the reference data, then we can build a list of the 2 or 3 key assumptions of success of this company. So the same way we can model financial success, we can model all the extra financial results. A little bit like B Corps or triple bottom line companies have different objectives.
Yeah.
It's the same way. And so there's different methodologies out there, and there's actually companies working on there's a bunch of software being developed to help you do that. It's a pretty hot category right now. And then you have to track these companies. So we do have a way to estimate and evaluate and say these are our 2 or 3 key assumptions. But then the reality is that we're just starting with this cohort a few months ago, and then you have to track in time to see are we on track for our environmental impact predictions, or are we way off? And if we're way off, why? Do we understand why? The same thing that as with finance. Where are you off? Do you understand why? What can you change? And what are you learning? And I think we're still in the learning phase. We're still in the discovery and validation phase for all these methodologies and impact, because they have to be applied. So in theory, they work. In practice, this is like software. You can think about software. It's when you actually write code that you find bugs, right? So I think that's a stage we're at in climate. There's a bunch of methodologies. There's not so much good reference data yet. We have some, but there's still a lot of work to do to organize it. So for example, the satellite images that you can get from NASA or from the European agency are pretty amazing. But working with that amount of data is not that easy. So we have to build layers of the tech stack on top of it to allow new innovation and new ideas and new products to be built. But it's out there. So we'll get there, but there's probably another 3 to 5 years of development that needs to happen before we're fully standardized and we have all the references to say more precisely and to forecast more precisely the potential impact. You can do it. I'd say you could get a pretty good approximation today. This is how I would this is where we're at, I would say.
So I think, thank you so much for sharing all of this, very thoughtful and insightful information. So would you think that there is like anything that the audience, the community can help you today with what you do?
If you're a founder and you've been running a company even for just a year or 2 or 3 or 10, but you don't have to wait 10 years to help other entrepreneurs. And I think this is a recipe. This is really Californian. When I worked in San Francisco, people would always say, "How can I help you?" I think that's a secret part of the success of Silicon Valley. Not so secret. So as an entrepreneur, what you've learned in the last quarter, the last year, last 2 years can benefit other founders. So you're super busy. It's hard building a company, but keep some time to help the people who are just maybe one step behind you. That's super helpful and super beneficial. This is how you grow the maturity of an ecosystem. I think the second thing and why I joined SecondMuse is that we have one planet and we have to work collectively. So we have to learn to work together. There's tremendous profits to be made by solving this crisis, but it's not just about money. It's first about it needs to benefit the people. So unjust economies will crash. So there's an inequality problem in our society, and it varies in the world. But seeing the world as one place and looking at what's happening outside of your own bucket, right? Get out. Well, I was going to say get out of your city. It's still a little bit hard to do for a few months, but get more perspective. Talk to people outside of your inner circle, of your zone, of your region. Open your eyes. And I think that's the other thing. I wish that we will have one day, actually working with the folks from Startup Genome, an international network of climate entrepreneurs and climate angels. I think this entrepreneurs who can also invest time and money to help others. An international green angel network is something that we're missing. It doesn't exist. I've been looking for it. If you're listening to the show and you're running one, let us know. We'll help you. But we need that. And by international, I mean that angel money is essentially close to you geographically, typically. So it needs to be broad. So we need to have smart people working together across the world, which probably needs that we also need a network of funds. So I'd love to talk to other fund managers. It's hard to be an emerging fund manager. Let's work together. Let's open source more of our work. Let's share more of our learnings. Let's help each other. So the same advice I gave to founders, I'll give to fund managers. Take some extra time to help the people who are coming right after you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Sylvain. It was very, very great to speak with you. Any question that I should have asked and I did not?
Is it time for you to go take care of your family? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. And I start to receive some message.
I have 4 kids and I love being a dad. I think that the next generation, we owe it to them to do a better job of managing this planet.
Well, we're all working on it, but thank you so much. It was a pleasure to speak with you, and hopefully we can be in touch again and collaborate as you mentioned. I think we're all on it together, and let's do it. Thank you so much, Sylvain.